So Congress is afraid to ask the tough questions about the coup cabal and the deep state conspiracy against the president, but Judicial Watch isn't. Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch, who testified against the president in the impeachment sham in the House, is someone we're very interested in. Why? Because we had sources tell us that she told the Ukrainian embassy when she was still ambassador to Ukraine, she directed her people to monitor the social media accounts of people around President Trump, namely his son, his lawyer Rudy Giuliani, and a whole bunch of others. And they were using this program called CrowdTangle. And Yovanovitch, this was happening around the time there was significant pressure being brought to bear on Yovanovitch. Yovanovitch, I think her name. I keep on mispronouncing her name. It's Yovanovitch, excuse me. And the problem was you can't monitor American accounts, social media accounts, without violating the law in this regard. And the law here is the Privacy Act. The government just can't start creating files on American citizens willy-nilly. That's not allowed. The Privacy Act governs the creation and the handling of personally identifiable files. So this is the list of alleged targets. Jack Posobiec, who works for OANN, One America News Now, Donald Trump Jr., the president's son, Laura Ingraham, who's on Fox, Sean Hannity, Michael McFaul, who's the only non-Trump ally here in the sense that he was Obama's ambassador to Russia, Dan Bongino, Big Dan, is on Fox and has his podcast, Ryan Saavedra, who works for the Daily Wire, which is Ben Shapiro's operation. Rudy Giuliani, the president's lawyer. Sebastian Gorka, former Trump White House official, now radio host, a strong supporter of the president. John Solomon, an independent journalist, well known for exposing the deep state operatives. Lou Dobbs, Fox Business. Pamela Geller, who is a conservative activist. And another investigative reporter often on Fox, Sarah Carter. So these folks were targeted, and quite specifically, they wanted to look at their accounts when the following search terms popped up: Biden, Giuliani, Soros, and Yovanovitch. So why were they asking about what Biden had to do with any of these people? Why were they asking about what Soros had to do with any of these people? Well, Biden, self-explanatory, because the concern about the Biden-Ukraine scandal. Soros, why is Soros? Because Soros is jointly funding a, quote, anti-corruption group in Ukraine with the U.S. government, of all things. So your tax dollars partnered with Soros's money. And they were targeting and were involved in, it looks like, going after Trump. Implicated in the leaking of information to target Paul Manafort and people like that. And they're not allowed, and so this is a big deal. I mean, just think, to try to monitor social media accounts for just one individual. That's a lot of work. And so, as I said, there's a specific program that allows them to do it. And but they needed help because our embassy staff in Ukraine is obviously not unlimited in terms of resources, so they asked Washington for help. And so our reporting indicates that the Washington people said, well, what are you doing here? It's illegal. You can't do it. You got to stop it. So A, we're not sure how long it was going on, and B, whether it was stopped. So we filed a Freedom of Information Act request about what was happening, and of course, the deep state has stonewalled us. And that's really disturbing, because isn't it amazing? We asked for these records back in October, and we haven't gotten word one from the State Department about it. Now, Yovanovitch is seen as a critic of Trump. her recall by Trump is a major issue in his impeachment. And so what's being alleged here is corruption by a key anti-Trump witness. And the State Department doesn't want to turn over the documents. By the way, these are one of these cases where we know they have the documents. We know they're there. We don't have access to them, though. And they're stalling the release of the documents until after the president's impeachment trial is over. And based on public reports, I see that people trying to get documents that seemingly are trying to be used to make the president look bad are getting special favors and special access from the State Department. So the deep state, again, continues to try to undermine Trump while opposing efforts to expose the real corruption behind his targeting. Now, Yovanovitch was in the news because this associate of Giuliani had text messages from some not credible individual that Yovanovitch was somehow being monitored in Ukraine. And it turns out that that's pretty incredible that it would have happened, in the sense that it didn't likely happen. So everyone's pretending to be aghast at that, but we've got sources that the ambassador was illicitly monitoring Americans using government resources. Now, she was asked about this during the impeachment, and she seemed to deny it. It was one of these non-denial denials, suggested she didn't really know what was going on, and but of course they needed to keep track of what was in the media. So it's up again to Judicial Watch. Is Ambassador Yovanovitch's anti-Trump activism, as alleged, going to be a subject of the Senate impeachment trial? No. It should be, but it won't be, for the reasons I've discussed with you. Fear-based decision-making by the Senate. Frankly, the president doesn't have the support in the Senate to allow him to provide a strong defense for himself. So it's up. So I want to go through this because this is important. The Senate doesn't want to talk about what Yovanovitch was up to. They don't want to talk about the leaker, the whistleblower, the alleged whistleblower. Just think about this. You had the whistleblower gaining access to a phone call that was classified between the President of the United States and Ukraine. There's a question of whether he should have had access to the contents of that call. Then he's talking about that issue with Schiff or his office. Schiff lies about it. All of this is involving classified information. I call him a leaker because none of this is covered by the whistleblower laws that he's alleging to be operating under. In fact, the deep state ICIG had to change the rules to get the complaint validated. And the complaint really has never been validated because he's never found to be a whistleblower. The DOJ needs to be investigating that. I'm not aware of that taking place. That leak investigation as I've laid out for you. Is the Senate going to allow the president to bring in the whistleblower? I doubt it. I doubt it. Although, you know, when you call your senators, maybe you can ask what they think about it. So what is it? What happens? Well, once again, it's up to Judicial Watch. Judicial Watch to the rescue again. We filed 2 lawsuits asking for records about what this whistleblower was up to. He shows up in the Mueller report. Well, not surprisingly, assuming this is the same guy. And we want to know what he was doing at the CIA. And then, of course, you had the abuse by Schiff, taking the phone records of Rudy Giuliani and publishing them, which led to the publication of other phone records, like Devin Nunes's phone records, John Solomon's phone records, Victoria Tenzing's phone records, Jay Sekulo's phone records, all sorts of people's phone records, innocent Americans, had their confidential personal phone records published. Senate going to talk about that? Well, I told you they should. But again, what do you think is going to happen? Again, ask your senators what you think about that and what they think about that. So Judicial Watch has sued Schiff for information on this phone record grab. So we're asking about Yovanovitch. We're asking about Schiff. We're asking about the leaker. And of course, we have the lawsuits on the Biden corruption scandal vis-a-vis both Ukraine and China. So I can count, I'm just going to go through my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At least 6 lawsuits off the top of my head on issues related to the impeachment of President Trump, issues that the House refused to look into and that the Senate's unlikely to look into. So thank God for Judicial Watch. But isn't it outrageous? Isn't it outrageous that we're the ones having to do the heavy lifting here?
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.